Hi, Tom here. In this week's Circle Line Optical video, I'll show you one way to draw a round table using perspective. We can also add some chairs and some colour and a room to the table later on. For this drawing you just need to use a pencil and some paper, but for my drawing I'm using a grey piece of paper, some white chalk, some pens and some colouring pencils. So for this drawing just choose whatever drawing tools you'd like to use. The first step in this pencil drawing is to draw a dot, which will be the vanishing point towards the top middle of your paper. Next we can draw a horizontal line which will be the front edge of the circle in perspective, which is called an ellipse, the circle seen on its side. Then we can draw a guideline to the vanishing point from the right end of the horizontal line, and then another guideline from the left end of the horizontal line, again going to the vanishing point, as all receding lines go towards the vanishing point in perspective. Next we can draw another guideline, and this line represents the furthest distance that the round table will have in our drawing. Next we can draw a diagonal line from corner to corner, one from the left and then one from the right. And then where these two lines cross, we can draw another guideline, which is a horizontal line, which is parallel to the other horizontal lines in the drawing. Next we can draw a vertical line where they cross as well. And these are all the guidelines that we need for the first ellipse in perspective, the top of the round table in perspective. Next, it's now time to draw the circle. The circle needs to touch each of the halfway points in our guideline. Notice how the circle is at an angle but still smooth. At least that's the aim. Once you have the first ellipse drawn, the top of the round table, we can draw two short vertical lines at either end, and then all we need to do is copy the front of the first ellipse a little bit lower down, and then we have a tabletop with a thickness to it. Next we can draw a guideline of a vertical line going down the centre below the top of the table. And then we can draw another horizontal line, and this will be for the back line of a new ellipse for the base of the table. From the edge of the right hand side of this horizontal line, we can draw a guideline from our vanishing point coming forwards on the right, and then another guideline from our vanishing point coming forwards on the left. And this will help us map out the ellipse for the base of the table. Then we can just add a new horizontal line in the foreground towards the base of the paper, and in this way we've got a square in perspective. Then we can draw the two diagonal lines again, and where they cross we can draw another horizontal line, and then we can continue the vertical line. Then we can draw a circle within it, and then that will be our second ellipse. We can add a thickness to it again by two short vertical lines either end of the ellipse, and then copy the front of the ellipse. Next we can draw another smaller ellipse just in the centre, and then we can draw two sides of the central column of the table. So now we have the basic table in perspective. For my drawing I mentioned at the beginning that I was using grey paper. That's because I want to use some white chalk, but any drawing materials that you have, that will be absolutely fine to use. The next step in this drawing is perhaps to draw a vase on the table, and we can just freehand draw an ellipse. Because this ellipse is the same angle as the ellipse on the table, we just draw something similar. And then I'll just put some flowers in the vase, maybe some tulips. So some flowers and some leaves. Once we've drawn the vase of flowers, then it might be time to use an eraser and erase some of the guidelines that we no longer need. So guidelines are just lines which are useful for mapping out where the main lines of a drawing go. So now we can see what we have. I think I'll make this vertical upright of the table a little bit thicker, and then I'll put some reflective marks on it and then shade them in with the 4B pencil that I'm using. I'll shade it with a dark tone, and then I'll do a mid-tone as well in some areas, leaving some areas blank. Next, we could add some tone to the thickness of the surface of the round table, just using a graded tone, changing from dark to light and back again. And then we could repeat that for the base ellipse at the base of the table. Next, I think I'll use a very thin black pen to go around the edges of the table. And then I have this sort of greenish blue pen, which is very thin, but I think it's the right colour, so I'll use it so that the top of the table looks a little bit like glass. So obviously in your drawing you could colour it in any which way you think would look good. So I'm leaving some gaps in between the colouring of this. And then for the vase, I think I'll draw that in with a purple colour. And then the leaves of the tulips, just green that I have. So just green pencil. And then a red pencil, or maybe a purple pencil for some of the flowers. And then the vase could have a reflection. I'll make the reflection quite long because I don't really want to draw the tulips. I don't really want to draw the reflection of the tulips, so I'll just make the reflection of the vase quite long, so that becomes a non-issue. But there would be a reflection of the central post of the round table too, so I'll just draw that into the base. And then maybe we could do some parallel lines on the top surface of the round table. And then I'll use the same sort of turquoisey greeny blue pen just to give it a slight indication of colour. Now, looking at the base ellipse of the table, rather than mapping it all out again, I could just try and copy that, and that could be the base of a chair, and then another ellipse above this for the seat part of the chair. Again, I'm looking at the ellipses already in the drawing, and I'm sort of copying the angle and shape of them, but just changing the scale of them, because we're seeing all these circles from the same angle. We could put the back of the chair in. In perspective, we're seeing everything from one particular point of view, from one position. So all of the ellipses will be very similar. They'll just be different sizes. Although saying that, I want this second chair to be the same size, more or less, as much as I can to the first chair. So as I draw the second chair, I'm sort of looking at it in relation to the first chair, making sure it sort of fits and doesn't become too different. So they look about right. I'll work into them a little bit more and then use an eraser. And once you've got the outline of the chairs, it's probably a good idea to erase some of the outline, because I want to make them look like they're semi-transparent. So I don't want a hard edge going all the way around the chairs, but I'll use a black pen, this fine black pen, just to give some dark edges and crisp edges to some parts of the chair, but not all the way round. So that's a good way of making something look reflective. So a good way to make something look reflective is to make it go from light to dark and dark to light quite quickly. And then within the form of the chair, I could use the side of the 4B pencil just to put a mid-tone in and maybe smudge it with an eraser. And then I think I'll add a little bit more of a darkness to particularly the base of the chair, so it links with the base of the table as well. Once you think the chairs are about right for what you need for your drawing, then you could see what other sort of drawing tools that you have. And because I'm using grey paper, I'm going to use this white chalk just to show some highlights on the chairs. It's always tempting to put a little bit too much details and too many things in a drawing. So for this drawing I might put in a little bit too much, but then I'll try and erase it or smudge it out so it becomes a little bit more simpler again. So once you have the table and chairs, it might be a nice idea just to draw a horizontal line for the edge of a room that goes behind the table and chairs. It's a little bit more tricky drawing a horizontal line between things because you sort of have to match them up as you go along. If you want to use a ruler, that's absolutely fine. And then we can draw a vertical line on the left and then a vertical line on the right, and then that will represent the back sort of rectangle of a room. And then we've still got the vanishing point, the first dot that we drew, and we can use that same vanishing point to create the diagonal line on the right and the diagonal line on the left, and that will mean that the table and chairs are now in a room. But the horizontal line, we can just erase the far left and the far right parts of the horizontal line because we no longer need them. We can use the same vanishing point if you want to draw some floorboards on the floor. And then we could just finish off this drawing by drawing some reflections in the surface of the floor. So just repeating the shapes but just making them upside down. And then maybe these shapes which are upside down, sort of the tone peters out as it comes lower on the paper. And then maybe the left-hand wall and the right-hand wall of the drawing could be darker, and maybe a few more highlights. So that's one way to draw a round table in perspective. If you'd be interested to know more about drawing, please consider joining my online drawing courses. There are more details at circlelineartschool.com. Thanks for watching. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel where I post a new drawing every week.